Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and tonight I just got back from watching Saw X, which I'm assuming means 10th installment. Straight up, I'm just gonna tell you, I've seen, I think, the first 6 Saw movies, maybe 7, I don't know. I know that there were a couple of later editions that I skipped. I think it was like Jigsaw 3D, and then there was one that was just called Jigsaw, and then there was the spin-off Spiral. I never watched that one either. I watched most of the movies up to the point where the story kind of stopped, and I know that they did at least one that was like secretly a prequel the whole time. Anyways, so yeah, Saw movies, I mean, obviously they were a huge hit for a while. Like, they had their moment of being a thing, and then you know, it feels like the last couple entries have each been attempts to sort of revitalize the franchise. You know, like, you know, they put out the spin-off Spiral to see if, like, hey, it's not necessarily Jigsaw, but it's like in that world and it's inspired by him. It's, you know, similar concepts. And then there was the other one, Jigsaw, which was like a prequel, and then now we have Saw X, which is also a prequel. And I tweeted this a while back, and it's kind of like my as soon as you see the trailer for this thing, I have never seen a franchise that regrets killing off a character as much as the Saw franchise does. You know, like, the Saw franchise, they so wish that they had not killed the main bad guy off in the 3rd movie, because after that they moved forward and they had other people try to become Jigsaw, and they had like apprentices and all this other stuff, right? But the main guy is dead, and now they've just done a handful of prequel films when he was still alive, right? Which, you know, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I mean, you know, I'm Mr. Star Wars over here who might have complained about prequel films, right? I guess my only thing is that, like, in this movie is kind of a prime example of this. If you were to sit down and watch all the Saw movies, and you're actually like following along with the plot and the timeline and everything that happened, right? They are continuously revealing new things about John Kramer's past. You know, like the fact that he had a wife and then they lost a kid, and then, you know, he got the cancer thing, and then he drove himself off a cliff, and then he was after this person and that person and some lawyers and some doctors and some surgeons and some insurance people. He's gone after everyone. And now in this new movie, we're also being told that seemingly in between 2 and 3, he went on this whole excursion to this experimental surgery that supposedly could have cured his brain tumor. Like, they claim to have, you know, basically surgical ways of curing cancer, and it turned out, of course, to be this entire scam. You know, like, it was essentially just a big internet scam where they would trick a bunch of people who, you know, were sick, and they'd charge them, yeah, I don't know, $1 million or something, take them out to whatever country they happen to be in, and it's all really shady, you know. So, like, right away, a million red flags. But, you know, I guess the whole point is that these people, all they have is hope, so they're willing to go with it, right? So they kind of take them out to the middle of nowhere, and they do like surgery on them, but there's a bunch of hints where, like, okay, you're not really doing any surgery. In fact, it's kind of ridiculous the levels that the scam went to, because everything from other, you know, people who claimed to have been cured by these people, like, you have patients out there with these fake scars on and they go out to, I guess, these meetings, and they're like, oh, I was cured, look at me, I'm fine. And I guess they just kind of wait around and try to find people that they saw at the meetings, and then trick them into contacting these people, and go to the website and click on the link, and then you got to go to Mexico, and even the cab driver in Mexico is in on it. Like, everyone's in on it, and I'm like, okay, this this is almost as ridiculous as supposedly the level that John Kramer plans his things, because yeah, this is a Saw movie, right? Like, if you've seen 2 or 3 of them, then you've seen all of them. They're gonna have you know, some interesting traps. They're gonna have some really gory moments. And then they of course always try to end on some kind of twist moment. Some of them work really well and others do not work at all, and sad to say, I don't think that this twist works at all at the end of this one, because it is just another one of those moments where they try to genuinely make you believe that John Kramer planned for everything that happened. You know, even the stuff that seemingly goes wrong in the middle of his plans, he's like, no, I planned for this. It was all part of the plan. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. There's no way it was. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. So let's just go over this. Basically, yeah, he got scammed by these people, and he hunts them down one by one, and he puts them all in a big building, and he has them all in individual traps. The things that are different this time, and I did find this kind of refreshing, is that John Kramer is he's just showing his face here. He's walking around with them. He's talking to them directly. He's not hiding behind recordings or the puppet. I mean, he still uses those things, but he's in the room. They can see him at the window. Like, he's just like talking to them. So normally, you know, he's like very behind the scenes. No one knows what his identity is, and that was his whole thing. You know, it's all mysterious, but like now he's just talking straight to them. And I think it's because this is a much more personal one. Usually throughout the movies, you know, maybe the people are kind of in a very, very, very distant way connected to his situation, but he is just trying to teach them some kind of moral lesson or help them get over whatever weird obsessions that they have in life. But yeah, in this one, it's just a straight up very personal revenge story, and I think that does kind of add a little bit more of an element to, like, okay, you kind of get to be with the actual character of John Kramer more than you kind of ever have been, because he's always just been like this last minute reveal guy, and you see little glimpses of him in a flashback. You don't really get to spend this much time with him, so he's like all over this movie. So I think that does add something to it. But yeah, I think the traps, I would not say that any of these traps are any better or worse necessarily than stuff that we've seen in the past. I don't think any of them really like stick out. I'm not gonna like be like, oh, that's the trap from this movie that like 100% is like the best thing, you know, I'm gonna remember that thing later. It's like, no, not really. Some of them are kind of inventive, others are just a little silly, I guess. They do this thing, it happens in 2 of the traps, and it kind of pisses me off, to be honest with you, because remember, supposedly the whole plot here is that he's trying to teach these people a lesson, right? Like, do they have the will to live? Do they have the will to beat the game and do the thing that's being asked of them in order to survive, right? Like, that's the whole point. They have twice in this movie traps that have a countdown timer of like 3 minutes, and so you have 3 minutes to do this thing or you die, right? And my thing is, the people eventually, you know, obviously they do the whole screaming and hesitating and all that like anyone would, I guess, right? But eventually they do the thing, you know, like this one guy has to literally cut off pieces of his brain, and you know, yeah, it's real gnarly, but he's cutting off pieces of his brain and he has to put it in this jar, and he's doing it. The only problem is he has to sit here and wait for the piece to dissolve in this acid, and the countdown's going down, but he's done it. He can't control how fast the acid dissolves it, and that way would let him free. But the timer goes off and then he dies. I'm like, that doesn't seem right, you know? like if the whole point was to him to learn a lesson, it feels like he accomplished that, you know? And the same thing happens later, where like this lady has to cut off her leg and do the bone marrow goes through like this basically netted spoon that will, you know, it'll weigh it down as the bone marrow hits it. So she has it hooked up. She cut off her leg. She did the thing, but she can't control how quick the pumps are taking the marrow out of her body. She has no control over that. But the countdown only gave her 3 minutes, and it's like, it feels like these people only lost the games through like some technicality, like, because you put some arbitrary 3-minute countdown. Why not 4 minutes? Why not 5 minutes? What does the 3 minutes have to do with the game, you know, like the lesson, right? Because the whole point is that they learn a lesson, so why 3 minutes? You know, I don't know. I think those are the ones, and they've done this in other movies, where like that kind of feels like you cheated a little, right? Like it feels like the writers of the movie didn't want these characters to be around, so no matter what they were gonna lose, so they just like, there's a timer, and then they don't do it in time. I'm like, no, that seems lame. You know, come up with some other reason why they could not win the game, or they didn't want to do whatever. But like, if they did the thing, you know, then they should win. I don't know. That's just me. I know maybe I'm nitpicking the rules of these silly movies, but I feel like that's kind of breaking the spirit of what this is all supposedly about, you know, even though, yeah, John Kramer's methodology has always been bullshit, right? Like this whole like, we're gonna save people by making them save themselves kind of thing. It's all bullshit. But still, like, if that's the logic you're using, then you're not even being fair to that, but whatever. Anyways, yeah, so this movie also kind of ends in a very strange way. So because it's such a personal revenge story this time, and John Kramer's very much up in front, you know, he's front and center like the whole movie. Like he's very much the star of this one. Instead of, you know, hiding behind a puppet or a recording, he's just like there. The people who are being tested are, especially the main doctor lady, are much more depicted as complete villains, because they end up turning the tables at one point, and they get a gun on John Kramer and they force him into one of the traps, and then they have this small child that was introduced earlier in the movie, and they end up capturing him and putting him in the trap. And so now these people are, you know, it's like they did a good job of making the audience have to be on John Kramer and Amanda's side. Oh yeah, by the way, Amanda's in this one. And so because of that, it's like, okay, so now, you know, the questionable villains, you know, they're still villains, but, you know, like they made the people they're doing this to even worse. So now we're kind of forced to be on their side, and it ends in this way where, like, you know, even the whole, you know, tables being turned on them and them being forced in the trap, that's the thing that was supposedly all part of the plan. Like they planned on being forced into this trap at gunpoint, and then the office that the bad guys are, you know, again, see, I'm calling them the bad guys, the people who were trapped in this thing, because they were the con artists. Anyways, the con artists are in this office looking for money, and they get locked in the office, and then a recording plays. It's like, I knew you would be in this office. I completely planned for all of this. I totally knew this would happen, you know, which, again, the way it's all set up, I don't buy it. It doesn't make any sense, and I'll explain why in a second. But basically, yeah, it ends with them defeating the con artists, and so Jigsaw and Amanda and this small child, they get to leave the house, the trap house again that they made, and it's like bright outside and sunny, and it's like a happy ending. This one ends like in a kind of happy, joyous ending where they're all like, they have their hands over each other's shoulders and they're like, yeah, we did it, and the sunlight shows on the screen, and it's like Saw X, the ending, and then the credits play. And normally that is definitely not how these movies end. These movies end with like some cruel twist of fate, big surprise, you know? And this one kind of just ended in a weird happy way. I mean, happy for the bad guys, I guess. You know, or at least these other bad guys. They're all bad guys. There's no, the kid is the only innocent person here. Let's just put it that way. Anyways. It's definitely strange, especially because this movie is set between 2 and 3, and we're explicitly told that John Kramer only has roughly 3 months to live, which means that this takes place only a handful of months before number 3, where John Kramer dies, Amanda gets tested again because she is not, you know, she's in a real bad place in number 3. You know, she's having like a full-on mental breakdown, and they're fighting with each other, and you know, Amanda ends up getting killed because she can't control her rage and all this other stuff, right? And so she ends up dying in number 3. So for this to only have been a couple months prior, and now to like end on like a happy note, it's very weird, you know, especially because you're like, yeah, but in a couple months these two kind of hate each other. Or at least Amanda's having a breakdown, you know? So, I don't know. I guess the other thing is that, like, you know, again, I don't know how often you can come back to this. You know, how many prequels can you do? How much can you possibly say happened before John Kramer died? Because I understand maybe you regret killing off the character, but like at a certain point you have to. I mean, I know they already did movies where they're moved past this, but like how much stuff could have possibly happened? He could not possibly have planned every single thing you're claiming he planned in that amount of time. Because if you go watch the other movies, they've already said that stuff was happening during this time. Other events were taking place. So, you know, like, yeah, maybe don't take these movies that seriously, I know, but still, it's like, if you're gonna do all this work to establish a timeline and be, you know, very specific about when and what is happening with who, and you know, he's got both Amanda and the detective apprentices happening right now concurrently, and they're both helping him with this situation. I think eventually you can't keep doing this forever. You can't make another Saw movie that's also a flashback prequel that's also like just before John Kramer died, he also did this. And I'm like, how many things could he have done? You know what I mean? He's got like 3 months and we've got 10 movies here. You know, someone break down the timeline of events, because if you go do that, and I know those YouTube videos exist, the timeline of Jigsaw events, there's no way, you know, this movie probably barely fits in there. You know, whatever handful of days or weeks that this movie happens across, it's like it's barely working. The other thing, and this is like my last little thing here, is like, the reason it's so unbelievable that they actually planned for everything is because part of the plan, part of how the con artists end up turning the tables on Jigsaw and Amanda, is that there is a table in the middle of the room that has a cell phone on it, and they have to get some rope and tie it around that table and pull it towards them. That way they can call for help, who the help turns out to be this other guy who's also in on the scam, right? The thing is, the way they do this, the con artists, they open up the body of one of the members who's already died. They take out their intestine, use it as a rope to lasso that table and pull it towards them so they can get the cell phone and call for help. That was the plan. And there's no way that Jigsaw thought, okay, here's what's gonna happen. You leave your cell phone on this table in the middle of the room. They can't possibly reach it any other way. So one of them is absolutely gonna have the thought, hey, I know. Let me open up this body and use its intestine to, you know, like there's no way Jigsaw thought about that. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. He did not predict that someone would do that. And it's crucial to the plan because the whole thing is about getting this other guy there because they couldn't find him, you know? So like, it just, I'm sorry, no, it's ridiculous. Anyways, so Saw X, it's another Saw movie. You know, they do some interesting things where like John Kramer himself is front and center and he's not, you know, in the background. But overall, I wouldn't say that any of the traps are like any more crazy than stuff that we've seen in these other movies. You know, and maybe that's also just me because I just got done playing Mortal Kombat 1, so all the fatalities and all the crazy stuff you see in playing that game, I'm watching this and I'm like, yeah, okay, chopping off the leg, opening up the brain, got it, okay, you know, I'm not completely not phased at this point. But I don't know, it's fine. It's a fine movie. You know, if only for the novelty of seeing these actors play these characters again, even though some of them have definitely aged past what they would have been, you know, back in the mid 2000s when this timeline supposedly happened. You know, if only for the novelty of like seeing this happen again, because maybe it's been a while for you. I don't know. It's fine. It's fine. I would not say that this is going to end up revitalizing the franchise or anything. Honestly, I don't know if they need to reboot. I don't know if they need to just do like a huge time jump or what. But yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't know what Saw does from here, you know, because you have like the Halloween franchise, which, you know, at least sometimes they fully commit and they actually kill Michael Myers, and then a couple years down the road they reboot it. In fact, that's being talked about right now. I think the rights are being negotiated by other studios right now about the Halloween franchise. And then of course you have like stuff like Scream, where it's just a new person every time. But the Saw movies, it's all one continuity, just one plain continuity. And the unfortunate thing is that means your main guy here, you're either doing a flashback to when he was alive, or you just don't get to have him, you know, because he died in the third movie, and that just is always going to complicate things. So I don't know. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about Saw X. Were you impressed by anything here? Did you enjoy this one more? Because at least John Kramer was kind of more of a featured player, like he's actually feels like the main character. Or are you just like kind of over it? You know, I'm fine with these movies existing, you know. The novelty of like every Halloween, it was like, if it's Halloween it must be Saw, you know, like I kind of do miss at least seeing the commercials, you know, not that I see commercials anymore, but you know, I kind of miss it being, at the very least there was an annual Halloween event, and I enjoy Halloween having a thing in the movie theater, you know. So I don't know, let me know what you guys think. Is this gonna bring everyone back, or do they need to try something else with this franchise? Like they gotta press the hard reboot button or do something, you know. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.